I don't mean to be unnecessarily edgy here. It's just something I suppose I've noticed that kind of bugs me and perhaps betrays something about these disciplines, psychology and philosophy. What do those words really actually mean, or what were they meant to mean? What did they originally mean? Well, philosophy, as I'm sure you probably know, in ancient Greece, refers to the love of wisdom. But when you look at academic philosophy today, wisdom is not very much discussed. Discussions about how we live our lives rarely seem to come up. In fact, when I was studying philosophy at university, one of my university professors asked me what field of philosophy you're most interested in, and I said, Existentialism. And he said, you'll grow out of it. And I just thought that was the most awful thing, as if the only proper philosophy, the only philosophy you're allowed to do in an academic context has to be this kind of dry, academic philosophy that's completely divorced from how to live a good life and what it means to be satisfied in your pursuit of truth and things like this. Of course, this does raise the issue of what exactly we mean by wisdom. There's something practical about wisdom often, something kind of down to earth, but I think perhaps the most important thing to identify is that when we think about the wise people, the people we've labelled wise or intuitively feel are wise throughout history, many of them have warned against precisely what modern academic philosophy has become, getting overly lost in thought, over-intellectualizing what are essentially perhaps quite simple matters, mistaking obsessive thinking for the pursuit of truth instead of recognizing the limitations of thought. Lao Tzu said, "Those who know the truth don't speak it. Those who speak the truth don't know it." He said that the scholar learns more and more every day, whilst the wise man forgets more every day. And he said that the ultimate truth cannot really be put into words. In fact, that's pretty much the first thing he says in his famous work, the Tao Te Ching. And Lao Tzu is a fairly typical wise man. If anyone is wise, Lao Tzu is wise. He's this ancient Chinese sage who may or may not have existed, but his book is widely seen to be very wise. Socrates himself said he was wise because he knew that he knew nothing, and I think this betrays a kind of indication that obsessive thinking will not necessarily bring one to knowledge, and yet modern philosophy seems to be preoccupied with this. So is philosophy, as it is practiced in an academic department, a wise pursuit? Probably not. I did a master's in philosophy, and I looked at the professors and the PhD students, especially the latter, and I thought, are these wise people? Is it wise to spend 3 years of your life writing a 90,000-word essay on some obscure aspect of some so-called great mind from the 17th century? Is that a wise use of, 5% of your life, writing a big essay? I mean, that seems to me to be an absurd use of one's time, to do a PhD in philosophy, depending on the topic, but for the most part, they seem to be very dry and obscure topics with very little relevance to how we live our lives, or living a wise life. So I'm not a big fan of academic philosophy in general, and I'm not a big fan of academic philosophers in general. They seem to be fairly competitive in their pursuit of the truth, and it often seemed like more of a game of conversational one-upmanship than a genuine pursuit of truth and wisdom. Philosophy simply reduced to a way of playing the game of intelligence and perhaps belittling people that you wish to belittle as a part of certain social games, impressing people, looking intelligent, and this kind of thing. Then we come on to psychology. Psyche, the mind. Psychology is meant to be the study of the mind. There's not much of that going on in modern academic philosophy. Modern psychology even, The modern academic psychologist spends a lot of their time analysing the behavioural consequences of mental activities, or the supposed neurological causes, or at least correlates, of mental activity. You cannot study the mind scientifically because the mind is not an object. It is not something that can be studied scientifically, and so the determination of the psychologists to be a part of a science basically precludes the possibility of a genuine, direct, phenomenological study of the mind. And so very, very little of so-called psychology is actually the study of the mind. Most of it is the study of neurology or the study of behavior. And the actual study of the mind basically finds no real refuge in the universities and modern academia. If you want to study your mind, you're probably best off just getting a meditation bench and facing a wall. Arguably, the phenomenological school of philosophy is precisely psychology. It is a radical empiricism, an attempt to study the mind directly, but phenomenology is not a popular field of philosophy in modern academic philosophy, tragically, but hopefully through this YouTube channel it may become more popular, because phenomenology is something that we will be returning to again and again. Anyway, that's really all I had to say on that. Philosophy is no longer the love of wisdom, and psychology is no longer the study of the mind.